Hello, everyone, and welcome to this second installment of Poetry Really Matters. My name is Cendrine, and this is
My name is David Ellis.
And we're very happy to have you with us today. So, this is the plan for today. We're going to start, like we did last time, with a poem. Then we're going to share some announcements about the magazine. Very exciting. We're going to discuss a poetry-related topic, and then we'll answer your questions and your comments and so on and so forth. So that's about it for us right now. So we hope you're doing really, really well. That December has started well for you, and that you're ready to celebrate the holiday season with a lot of poetry, hopefully, a lot of positivity, a lot of upliftment, a lot of poetry. Right, David?
Well, I hope everybody's done all their Christmas shopping because I'm still looking for gifts at the last minute for one of my brothers.
Yeah, it's always a stressful period for me, finding presents and so on and so forth. But that's the way it is, right? That's I don't know about you, but I really like the food for Christmas. It's so relaxed and everything. So it's my favorite.
The easiest part for me, but we still leave that to the last minute. But we've actually got everything up to date now, I think. So we've got tons and tons of food just lying around. So I've just got to make sure none of it goes off before the actual date of Christmas. And we've got multiple roast dinners to get through as well before. So that's going to be a bit of a struggle.
That's it was worse when I lived in France. It was like we were eating nonstop for several days. Here it's in Canada, it's a little better. I have to watch my weight after all.
Let's have the low fat options.
So anyway, let's get started right now with the first thing for the show. So today we have chosen a poem from a very, very famous poet. His name is Alphonse de Lamartine. He is French. And the poem we've chosen is called Le Lac, or The Lake. So what I'm going to do is read it in French, and David will read the translation in English. So here goes.
And just in case anybody thinks that I don't actually speak French, I took French at GCSE at school, but I'm going to be using someone else's translation, and we'll post the link to that if you want to read the translated lyrics later on.
So here goes. Le lac. Ainsi, toujours poussés vers de nouveaux rivages, dans la nuit éternelle emportés sans retour, ne pourrons-nous jamais sur l'océan des âges jeter l'ancre un seul jour. Au lac, l'année à peine a fini sa carrière et près des flots chéris qu'elle devait revoir. Regarde, je viens seul m'asseoir sur cette pierre où tu la vis s'asseoir. Tu mugissais ainsi sous ces roches profondes, ainsi tu te brisais sur leurs flancs déchirés, ainsi le vent jetait l'écume de tes ondes sur ces pieds adorés. Un soir, t'en souvient-il, nous voguions en silence. On entendait au loin, sur l'onde et sous les cieux, que le bruit des rameurs qui frappaient en cadence tes flots harmonieux. Tout à coup, des accents inconnus à la terre du rivage charmé frappèrent les échos. Le flot fut attentif, et la voix qui m'est chère laissa tomber ces mots. Ô temps, suspends ton vol, et vous, heure propice, suspendez votre cours. Laissez-nous savourer les rapides délices des plus beaux de nos jours. Assez de malheureux ici-bas vous implore. Coulez, coulez pour eux. Prenez avec leurs jours les soins qui les dévorent. Oubliez les heureux. Mais je demande en vain quelques moments encore. Le temps m'échappe et fuit. Je dis à cette nuit, sois plus lente, et l'aurore va dissiper la nuit. Aimons donc, de l'heure fugitive, hâtons-nous, jouissons. L'homme n'a point de port, le temps n'a point de rive. Il coule et nous passons. Tant jaloux se peut-il que ces moments d'ivresse où l'amour à long flot nous verse le bonheur s'envolent loin de nous de la même vitesse que les jours de malheur. Et quoi, n'en pourrons-nous Fixer au moins la trace? Quoi? Passer pour jamais? Quoi? Tout entier perdu? Ce temps qui les donna, ce temps qui les efface, ne nous les rendra plus. Éternité, néant, passé, sombres abîmes, que faites-vous des jours que vous engloutissez? Parlez, nous rendrez-vous ces extases sublimes que vous nous ravissez? Ô lac, rochers muets, grottes, forêts obscures, vous que le temps épargne ou qu'il peut rajeunir, gardez de cette nuit, gardez, belle nature, au moins le souvenir. Qu'il soit dans ton repos, qu'il soit dans tes orages, beau lac, et dans l'aspect de tes riants coteaux, et dans ces noirs sapins, et dans ces rocs sauvages qui pendent sur tes eaux. Qu'il soit dans le zéphyr qui frémit et qui passe, dans les bruits de tes bords, par tes bords répétés, dans l'astre au front d'argent qui blanchit ta surface de ses molles clartés. Que le vent qui gémit, le roseau qui soupire, que les parfums légers de ton air embaumé, que tout ce qu'on entend, l'on voit ou l'on respire, tout disent, ils ont aimé. Thank you.
So just in case anybody just tuned in, you haven't tuned into the French version of La Poetry Matters. Cendrine has just given us a lovely reading of Le Lac, which is The Lake by Alphonse de Lamartine. So I'm going to have a go at doing the English translation, and I'm not translating it myself. We have someone else that's kindly translated it. We found on the internet. And what is also interesting, I want to just very quickly say before I read the poem out, is that there's a funny technique. I like found poetry, and I actually once wrote a poem based on a language that I didn't know by simply listening to the sound of the language and then trying to translate it myself into my own words. So that is another way, if you're looking for any inspiration for poetry, is that take a foreign language or a foreign poem where you don't have the translation, you don't know the language, and see how it sounds to you, and see if you can make something out of that. And maybe in the next show, I'll demonstrate with that poem that I wrote in the past. But anyway, so let's give, I just wanted to give it a little interesting sort of aside before we get into the translation. So as we said, this is a translation of The Lake by Alphonse de Lamartine. The Lake. Thus, ever driven onward to new shores, borne constantly away, can we never, in the ocean of the ages, drop anchor for a day? Oh, this beautiful lake! The year has hardly flown, yet here I am beside these so beloved waves of hers, here but alone. Waves, you crash against the rocks for her, white blazing beat, your heads against the wind, but also caressed her lovely feet. One night, do you remember, we lay here and felt the rhythmic swish of oarsmen slicing through your pelt. That night was so enchanted, I swear to you I heard accents never known on earth as she let fall these words. O time, stop your flight. Hours, don't run away. Allow us to savour this delight, the best of life's brief day. So many unhappy ones implore you, run, run for them. Take, too, the care which eats them up, but leave us peace, please, in pacem. That's Latin. It's fruitless to complain, but these moments aren't enough. I beg shy night to linger, but look, bold dawn scares her off. So let us love, then, let us love. Time cannot be caged. Make haste, we'll strut our tiny hour, and then we must quit the stage. Jealous time, why do you rob with such frank eagerness our days of joy, but dawdle when you see us in distress? Why is it we live and love, but leave no trace? Why do you give us these raptures, which you then efface? Eternity, nothingness, the past, such sombre chasms. Where do you hide our human fire, our passion-prompted spasms? Lake, tall rocks, oh deep and secret woods, nos amis, won't you keep us at least some memory? We live on in your calm, sweet lake, your storms, your laughing shores, your gloomy pine trees, craggy rocks through which the water roars. It's in the summer wind we live, which ruffles as it kisses, and in the single thoughtful star which reflects and reminisces. The rose which droops, the oak in ivy gloved, the fragrance of the forest, these will tell the world they loved. And that's the end of the translation.
Very, 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 very nice.
Yeah, I love that poem.
Yeah, it's a beautiful poem, and unfortunately, translation we always lose a little bit of meaning in a translation, but it's always beautiful to read a poem that was originally written in another language. So it's always interesting for me to see how it works with poetry, and the beauty of poetry is that you can definitely translate in different ways. So it's up to the translator really to give a specific meaning, and it's almost like rewriting a poem in a way.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's always interesting.
I was going to try translating it in Google Translate just to see what it would come up with. But another funny thing is that apparently with certain languages, if you translate something using Google Translate, then translate it back again and do it a couple of times, you actually come up with a completely new meaning. If you put it through the translator multiple times. So that's another way to come up with something. But it probably won't make sense afterwards. But
So anyway, thank you very much, David, for reading the poem in English. It was definitely a treat.
I've never read that poem before. I've never read it before. So, but when you showed it to me the other night, I fell in love with it. I just thought, no, this is very. I like the meter, as I said to you before. I think because he's from the Romantic era of poetry, and I do like those Romantic poets. And I love the meter on that poem. I love the couplings of the sonnets and how that meter unfolds in that poem. It's great. So.
And it's very interesting because the rhythm and the flow of the French language cannot really be emulated in English. It's very interesting because I write in both languages, and I have a specific style in French and a specific style in English. I can never. I've translated my poems from French to English and from English to French because I write in both languages, and the flow is never the same. It's very interesting how a language works. Anyway, today we wanted to talk about the following topic: what is positive poetry, and it's related to the submissions that we receive in general. So I know, David, you had a few things to say about that today.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Mostly with the submissions that we've been receiving, we can clearly identify inspirational messages tucked away in the poems, even with the most abstract sort of ones. But I think that the distinction that I wanted to make with the submissions that we've been receiving is that sometimes we have to reject poetry that we do like because it isn't clearly inspirational enough, in as much that the description that we receive with the poem mentions that it's inspirational to the person because of perhaps a family member or a theme or a kind of reason in their life that's what that makes the poem inspirational to them. And I know when you write poetry, or even writing, you're supposed to write for yourself and then worry about the market later. But when you go to publish in a journal, we want to make the writing accessible to people. So if you've got some inward thinking writing, ultimately we're looking for something that has a more broad kind of approach in terms of the message and how people will perceive that message. And if it's something that is either introspective or even philosophical in nature, you can tell us that it's inspirational to you because of X, Y, Z. But ultimately, if it doesn't come across as that the way we read it, then it's very difficult for us to, or impossible for us to approve if a publication in the journal, because we're trying to promote positive inspirational poetry, and we don't want to have the readers to try and understand and say, okay, that's inspirational to the person because of their that relationship with that theme or topic or person, because it's not going to relate to the other person. Yes, they might have a daughter or a father or a son or mother themselves who is in that situation, but then you're reaching for that, and there's nothing wrong if we can see within the message of the poem that that will connect with those people, that then fine. But if the poem means that to you, but then we can't see the meaning of the poem connecting to that reason, and I think there has been a disconnect, I think, with a lot of the submissions we've been receiving, that we've had to reject and ask for something else because, as I say, there isn't. You can say it's inspirational, but we're just not seeing it in the actual submission. And that was what I wanted to get across in today's episode. simply was that I think it's not so much, I think people understand the nature of positivity and inspirational, but then the poem might come across as either philosophical or abstract, or just completely kind of against at odds with the description that we've been given. And when that happens, if we see that disconnect, then it's unfortunate, but we have to say, look, we'll give you another chance, but and we can't keep giving you many chances. We say that we offer one free submission per period, and we're perfectly willing to be flexible if you've made a mistake and you've sent us something that isn't, we can see you've got good writing, but it's not clearly inspirational. We'll give you another chance, but ultimately you must think before you send the piece, and think, are you really dressing up with an excuse to say, this is an inspirational poem because of this that affected me by so and so, whereas what it should be is this is inspirational because of these clear markers that we can see in the poem. And you can send us abstract poetry. There's nothing wrong with that. But as long as we can draw some sort of inspirational message from it, or there's some inspirational conclusion at the end, it could be a negative that is then turned into a positive. That is always what we've said as well. That can be done. But sometimes some things are just so completely abstract that it's just we can't see the inspirational message in them. And that is what we've been driving at. So if you can focus more on that and give us something that is really positive or turns a negative into a positive, then you're going to fly through and you're going to get into copies of our journal very easily.
I think it's important also to remember that that ties into what you do as a writer as well. This is not just for the magazine. It's for you as a writer, as a poet. If you want to be published, if you want to be successful as a published poet, whether you're self-published or you're published by a regular publisher, what you have to realize is that you have to write for an audience. You're not writing just for yourself. So when you publish poems on your blog, on your website, that's fine. But if you want to be taken seriously as a poet, if you want to, especially by publishers and by magazine, by journals, you have to show them that what you're doing, you want to have a special impact on your audience and not just on yourself. So it's not about just sharing about you. It's about making this experience relatable to your audience as well. So you have to think about that. So, for example, when I write, I've written many genres. I always, something to help you, this is a tip. I always have the face of a person, whether it's a real person, a fictitious person, like a character in the book. I always have someone in mind or a name. When I write, I know that I'm focusing on a specific person. So in marketing, we call that a persona. So it's a person with a specific age, a name, a specific hobby, a specific job. You can invent it. But if you have this person in mind when you write, it's going to make the content targeted to that person. And I can tell you from experience, because I was a professional content creator for years, and I wrote for clients. And every time I wrote a piece and I had a specific person in mind, whether it's a real person or fictitious, the type of person I was targeting always responded to me on the blog or in my posts or in my books and so on and so forth. So just remember that. Do not write just for yourself. Otherwise, have a diary, have your own blog. But if you want to write for an audience and to be taken seriously and to be accepted in journals, start writing for others.
Yeah. Because I think when we write for ourselves, we've got very much sort of creative freedom in how we write, and it's no good taking a piece and saying, well, if you look at it this way, it could be inspirational. Is that either it's, to me, it's kind of, is there inspirational, motivational kind of aspects in there? And if there isn't, there's no point trying to fit it into that particular box. If you've written something that is dark and passionate and gloomy, then fine, and look for a journal that publishes that kind of sort of stuff. But because of the very nature of our journal and the uniqueness of our journal, we are clearly very, very focused on positive, uplifting poetry. And as I said, we will accept dark topics if you can change the perception of the piece within the actual piece itself. But again, there's no point taking something that you've written and thinking, oh, I could dress this up and say that it's something that it's not. If it's not what you think, and it's about perception, I think, of your own style and your own work as well. I think, and how to describe your own work. And as I say, we can see through, very quickly, whether someone said something is something that is inspiration or not, simply because of the nature it comes across. And we've had very good poetry. We feel sad when we have to reject it, but we're not. But we want people out there to know that we're not rejecting it because we don't like their poetry or we don't think that they can write very good poetry. They can write very good poetry. It's just that you have to fit in with a theme. Otherwise, it's going to go against our principles of the journal and what we're trying to put out with the journal and try to inspire people as well.
So before you send poetry to journals or our journal, for example, just show the poetry to different people.
Good idea.
Let them know. But not just anyone. Show the poetry to people who are able to give you constructive feedback. They can tell you, yes, I like it, but you need a because. No, I don't like it, but you need a because. Just because they don't like it doesn't mean that you cannot send it to us. But at least with the feedback, you know what to expect and you know if you're on point with the kind of audience you're targeting. So you can ask, for example, do you think the poem I shared with you is uplifting, that it's inspirational, that it's positive? Has it affected you personally and in what ways? You can ask several questions. So for me, I've received like negative reviews. Like it has happened to me, but I don't take them personally because I remember that it's people are reacting to what they're reading. They're not reacting to me. They're reacting to the energy behind the piece. So if you can understand that and say just because someone doesn't like something doesn't mean that they don't understand your art or your passion. It just means that they didn't relate to it. But as long as they tell you, I didn't relate to it, I didn't like it because, then that's feedback that you can use to make your poetry more relatable to the audience you're trying to target.
Absolutely. That's very good advice. I'll take it on board myself. No, that is very, very good advice because, like you say, you can then either immediately dismiss it if you realise that the person isn't on your wavelength because they might not like that kind of poetry. But if they say, I didn't like it because of this, that, or the other, and you think, I can improve it that way, it's whether you can get something out of it that you think you can use something positively for that, or you can just draw on it and say, well, that's the person's opinion. I respect their opinion, and but at least if you know the background behind it as to why. And that's why we try to make that distinction, because as I say, that's why, it's 99% of the reason why we're rejecting poetry at our journal isn't because we dislike the poetry that's sent to us. It's because we have to have a clear message. And when I say clear message, I don't want to discourage people from giving us abstract poetry. Even abstract poetry we have seen can have positive, uplifting lines. It hasn't got to tie back necessarily to the name of the poem or the theme of the poem. It's just that there's got to be some kind of inspirational, motivational core there, and that's what's driving us with our criteria.
Yeah. And for those who have submitted poetry to us, we're very fair. we give people a chance, especially the people respectful of our time, and we've met a lot of fantastic people so far. So just because we say no to you and we asked you to resubmit a poem, because that's what we usually do unless there's something really wrong. But I don't recall David not having asked someone to resubmit, maybe once or twice, but that was it. But I do not, we're very fair. But if we reject you and we say no, it's not because you're not talented. It's just because your poetry doesn't fit us. So it means that other journals would be more than happy to have your submissions. So do not get discouraged because we say no. David and I have been rejected many, many times. It hasn't stopped us from publishing books. We're always publishing books. We have new books out, actually, the two of us individually. So that's something we'll talk really briefly after about. But yeah, do not get discouraged. We say no, we submit later. Rework your piece, because sometimes it's all a matter of working on 1-2 words, a sentence. When I write haiku, so haiku are my thing. And sometimes I spend 10 hours on the same haiku. I've submitted haiku before. I've been told no. And then I'm like, well, I'm reading the haiku and I realize, oh yeah, now I see why they said no. I rework it. I change a word here and there, and then it works better. That's what it is. So when someone says no to you, it's just an experience that you're taking to make your craft better. Not just better, but more relatable to the audience you're trying to target.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, David, I'll let you share our great news right now. We have several announcements to make about the journal. So I'll let you do the honors.
Yeah. I mean, in relation to the journal, we are working on issue 2. The submissions for that issue closed on the 15th of December. So I believe we're very, very close. We possibly think we'll be releasing it next week. If not next week, it'll be the week after. And the great thing about issue 1, and which you might notice with the little note we've got down on the bottom of the screen, is that we've actually got more channels, distribution channels, that we're making the journal available to. So initially, we were looking at publication on places like Amazon, and we tried a platform called Blurb, and a couple of other places. But we've got Kobo, Smashwords, Barnes & Noble, Chapters Indigo, Scribd. There are loads. We are actually getting better kind of distribution of it in relation to a lot of bookstores and things as well. Because we've upped the distribution channels for the ebook side of the journal as well. So and we're available on Lulu as well in print. But it'd be interesting to get some feedback from people in relation to the journal. Cendrine's holding up the print version of the journal. It looks lovely. It looks really, really good. But we've tended to have a lot of feedback, or we've not found a lot of huge desire for the print version. So if people want the print version, we'd like people to comment on this video and let us know. Or if you're happier with the digital versions, I think, because ultimately I think we're going to be going forward with digital versions. And then if we get a lot of feedback from people saying, oh, they're screaming out for the print version, then we'll make more print versions available. But as far as we're concerned, issue 1 is available in ebook and print across a huge number of stores now. We've updated our website to cover all of those different areas. And when we release issue 2, either next week or the week after, I'm pretty sure we're going to release it next week because we're almost there with it. We'll let people know who was successful in terms of getting their poetry into the second issue of our journal. And we're going to have a load of different places there as well. But we will be releasing it initially in ebook format. And then, as I say, if we get a lot of feedback from people, we want you to contact us and say if you're interested in the print version, then let us know, because if we get a lot of people asking for that, because with the previous with issue 1, we didn't get a lot of a huge amount of interest in terms of print copies for that particular one. So that's why we're making it more available to all these different channels in the ebook side. And it's cheaper as well, because you don't have the postage costs that people will have as well.
That's what I wanted to say. The reason why we didn't really want to do print, we're on the fence about making a print version of the issues, is that it costs a lot of money. It's a postage, as you mentioned, shipping and handling is very, very expensive. But Blurb is definitely a fantastic platform. I made all my photography books with them. The quality is excellent. But the problem is print on demand is quite expensive. So for us, it would be a very expensive option to look into. So we would only do print version if we have enough interest. Yeah. That's it. That's a matter of cost.
But however, we will later next year be thinking about doing a print amalgamation version of issues. So we will take say 3 or 4 issues and then put those into a collection, because if you're going to do print, then we feel like you're better off at least having 100 pages or more of poetry and other bits and pieces that we would put in the air as well. We do lots of other articles, we do social media tips and other books that we recommend, and tools for poets, and interviews as well, because we're going to have interviews in the journal. But ultimately, we feel the print version would be more justified with a collection of journals. So the smaller ones, because each journal size is probably only going to be about 30 or 40 pages. Yeah. So that suits digital better. But as I say, so we'll have an end of year thing, and we'll have more discussions as we go on further with more poetry shows and other announcements next year. But I think that's what we will move towards when it comes to a print version, will be an amalgamation of those, so people have got a nice, tidy collection of poems they can read at their leisure.
So we have a few more announcements to make in the next few months. So it's coming. So you can check out the first issue of our magazine at the link that we included on the screen, abpoetryjournal.com /issues. That's where we'll have our second issue. And by the way, next week we will announce the names of the poets who made it in the second issue on our blog. So make sure you check out abpoetryjournal.com to see the names and sign up for the newsletter so that you know what happens, what's new with us and the journal. But yeah, as David mentioned, we're almost done preparing the second issue. So we're very, very excited about that. We'll announce very soon when the second issue will be released. And we will use the same platforms to sell the issue. That's about it. I think that's it. And in terms of other announcements, if you guys want to make announcements in the comment section, let us know. We will put you on blast for the next show. If we find you left comments, you watched the show afterwards because you were not able to do it when we were doing it live. So feel free to leave comments and to tell us your latest news. We'll put you on blast on the next show. And for us, David, I know you released a book very recently, so tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so my most recent release is a book of found poetry based on the entire collected poetry works of Edgar Allan Poe. And what I find interesting about found poetry is that I can't necessarily control the outcome of the poem. So it's very, very kind of interesting exercise for me in that I can pick the words I want to use. But ultimately, I don't know whether I'll get a positive or negative experience from the poem. But generally, because I'm an inspirational poet, I would say that I have some level of control in terms of making the poetry come out very kind of deeply motivational, philosophical, and even inspirational or romantic. And so Edgar Allan Poe wrote about 60-odd poems himself alongside his short stories. And I'm interested in doing a follow-up kind of book that would that would focus on making found poetry from his short stories, but they would be of a longer thing. So because I've actually done found poetry based on Edgar Allan Poe's poems themselves, they were quite short. So all of my poetry in that particular book are only about half a dozen lines each. There's only a couple of long ones there because Poe used to write very short poetry, apart from a couple of epic ones that he did. The Black Cat and the Raven, I think, are two. Well, the Black Cat is the story, but the Raven is is his short story. But the Raven is the one that's more like a story and a poem as well, and it's very, very quite long. But over my career, I've actually used that poem several times within my work. So I might have used certain pieces there, like the ends of a chapter, or even his style. So I think I've actually in 2 or 3 of my books, I've referred back to Poe. So he's had a very kind of major impact on me in my life and my career, and this is my love letter to him. So that's available in a lot of different places now, in ebook and print version. It's only about 80 odd pages, so it's quite a short read. But as I say, so it's based on the entire collected works of Edgar Allan Poe. I'm actually working on a found poetry collection of works on Shakespeare's poems as well for my follow-up, and that's going to be multiple volumes, so I've got plenty to be doing with that. And I had a nice surprise with my previous poetry book that I issued earlier this year, Soul Music, The Colour of Magic, actually ended up on the 32 most popular poetry books to read in an ebook list. So I think I came in at number 10, but I was knocked down to number 12, so I was very upset with that. I was very, very proud to get that. And so I have multiple books out this year. Soul Music, The Colour of Magic was in June, July, I think. And the Poe book came out in September, October time, in time for Halloween. So the next one I think that I'll have out would be something based on Shakespeare that I hope to get out in early January, sort of the end of this year, early January. So that's my news. And so what about you, Cendrine? I know that you've got a series that you've been working on, and you've got a new book out as well. So
well, we've been very busy bees, the two of us. So yeah, I released the 3rd volume of my Walks, a collection of haiku, my series that I started this year. That's the third volume. I released volume 1 and volume 2 this year as well. So I've been in love with haiku for many years. I've studied them, I've written them, and they rock my world. So I wanted to write a series that would pay homage to my love for the haiku and to invite readers to enjoy the little moments in life, because that's what haiku are. Ultimately, you freeze action, you freeze a moment in time and an image, and you let the readers read between the lines. That's the beauty of haiku. So that's the third volume, and also turned one of my photography books, photography/poetry book, into an ebook. So I took the poems from that book and I turned them into a book. So the book is called When the Mind Travels, a Poetic Journey. So it's the companion book to When the Mind Travels, a Poetic Journey into Photography. So the physical book has the poetry and the photos. They are paired together. And the ebook just has the poems. The reason being that it's much harder to turn a print book with photography into an ebook because of the size of the weight of the file. So it's very hard to make an ebook out of that. That's why I had to take the poems and turn them into a book in itself. But that's about it. Yeah, that's a fourth book this year. So it's very exciting. And with the first issue of our magazine, it's 5 books if you think about it.
It's the fifth thing, yeah. I mean, because we're releasing issues of the journal in between times that we publish our books. Have you got a link that you can share in relation to your the books, where the books are available at your website? I know you updated your website recently.
Yeah. So yeah, it's cendrinemedia.com. So it's easy to find. I'm trying to type the name.com and type your so this is my website. I'm going to leave it for a few seconds. And can you type your link?
Yeah, I'll type my link in as well. Let's see.
Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting when you get, for all the folks who are interested in publishing their own poetry and their own books. Publishing your own poetry is always a fantastic idea. It's nice to be in magazines. It's nice to be in journals, but it's even nicer to have your name on one book and to build your legacy, to build your brand. And honestly, it's fun. It's fun to publish your own books because you're your own boss. And as I always say to people, writing a book is easy. Writing a book is very easy. Everyone can write a book. But marketing the book is
the most difficult part.
Another story. And it works. It's the same as releasing an issue of a journal, a book, anything that you publish under your name is marketing. The marketing is a hard part. So I know David can relate to that because the two of us have been marketing our books for many, many, many years. I don't know exactly when you started publishing books, but they started in 2006. So it's been 13 years. And the industry, the tips that worked 13 years ago still work now. They still do. The people who tell you they don't, they probably weren't around at the time to promote themselves. Yes, there's been a change because ebooks are now read a lot more than physical books. That's for sure. But in terms of what works, in terms of the strategy you can use, the marketing tips you can use, if you read articles around the internet, you will always find the same tips. That's what anyone who sells you the idea that things are different now and then you cannot promote yourself in the same way, they're basically lying to you. That's not true. I find the tips that I used 13 years ago work for me now in 2019. That's because, you have to treat your audience like human beings. You're not just selling. You're just there to build relationships with them. And
that's what's exciting about that's what's exciting about the latest issue as well, because I've made a point of putting a tool in there that will help people. I think that is very, very up to date. That looks at the modern kind of sort of market, and has lots of different kind of sort of areas you can look at, whether it's contests, other journals, ways to submit to journals, advice, all sorts of things. So that's another little kind of trick we've got in issue 2 of our poetry journal. It will be a tool. I try to do that with every issue that we're going to do of the poetry journal. The first tool that I ever put into our first issue was very much related to specifically to poetry, in as much that it was a kind of dialect kind of sort of tool. You would look at it and think about all the different words you could apply to poetry. So it's worth checking it out for that specific sort of purpose. But as I say, this issue 2 is going to have a guide in there that's very, very broad in its scope, and it's going to be very, very positive, I think, and helpful for a lot of poets. And it's the 2020 edition as well. So as I say, as soon as that issue comes out, and this is why it's such a good idea to get our poetry journal, because we're not just about poetry. We're focusing on the inspirational side of poetry as well. So yes, we've got people submitting to us, but we also try and give you social media tips and just general kind of ways of improving your own submissions and other little tips and tricks in there as well. So
no, it's very good. Well said. And it's a good transition to the end of our show. Thank you, David, for being here today with me, as always, my partner in crime, my friend. Thank you all for being there as well. We haven't seen comments or questions, but that's okay. I know, Christmas is around the corner. Today is December 21st, so you're probably busy shopping. But we know you will be back to check out the show later next week, in 2 weeks, doesn't matter. So the show will be available on our Facebook page, Auroras Blossoms Poetry Journal on Facebook. And we will also upload the video on YouTube as well. We do not have a dedicated page on YouTube yet. We use my account right now, but I'm pretty sure eventually we will get around to do that as well. In any case, thank you all again for coming, for attending, and we'll see you again in January, the 2nd or 3rd Saturday of January. Have a wonderful holiday season.
And I forgot one other little thing. I just was thinking about my particular book, and I didn't tell people the title of my Poe book. It's called See a Dream Within. I mentioned it's collected poetry based on Edgar Allan Poe, but the actual book is called See a Dream Within. So I just want to make sure people know that. But they can find that on the books link that I provided below as well. And it's the same for yourself, Cendrine, is that you've got your walk series, but you've got lots of other books that people can explore. So we encourage people to check out the links that we provided that are specifically to our books. Because how many have you got in total now? Was it 13 or something? Or is it more than
15?
15. So you're up to 15. So I'm behind. I had 5, I think, and I'm down to 4 now. So I'm actually going back the other ways.
Well, some are out of print for myself.
Yeah, one of mine went out to print, but ultimately I've got 4 so far, so I've got a long way to go to catch up with you.
No, it's coming. It's coming. In any case, have a wonderful holiday season, everyone, and we'll see you in January.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you very much for your time.
Bye.
Bye.